Welcome to the Fantasy's finest fantasy football podcast. Here are your hosts, William Spencer, Jalen McQueen, and Mark Carter.
What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Finest Podcast. Your host is back in the building. William Spencer here to talk about the draft. Everything is done. The draft rounds done. Day 1, 2, 3, all in the books. So now we get to go over all of that 2025 NFL draft goodness in preparation for the new fantasy football season. And I always try and preach that the draft is important. Some of my friends, they don't really look over the draft with the intent of, using that information towards fantasy football. They just kind of go into the draft and, they try and handle business that way. Me, I try to be prepared in going into the draft, having some rookies in my back pocket, having some, extra information as I get ready to prepare for my league's fantasy drafts. So this episode, and let me preface this by saying that there's so much to talk about because of the players being in different landing spots and breaking down player advantages now that they have their teams that have been they have been picked for. Let me say that right. But before we jump into all of that draft goodness, I gotta give you some players that I feel like you should be looking at heading into your 2025 fantasy season. These are players that you might consider some deep sleepers. I wanted to do these guys first. Talk about some deep sleeper players that you may be able to get for cheap in your dynasty leagues, or you may be able to get them even after the draft, depending on, how you feel about these players once I, let you know who's on my list. So before we get into everything in the episode, and we got a ton of news to cover, surprisingly, because, heading into the draft, you would figure that that kind of takes care of everything. Everybody's talking about that. But there is some news that has gone down over the last few days, even after the draft, that we got to get going. Oh, and I forgot to date it. April 30th, Wednesday. Duh. I can't leave that out. So you guys know when this episode is coming out or when it's going to drop, etc. So you don't be like, oh man, this is old. No, it's not. It is not old. But before we jump into the episode, make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel for the Fantasy's Finest so you don't miss the latest episodes. And if you're an audio person, don't worry, I got you covered there. The episode will be released or is going to be on your favorite audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audacity, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, you can follow us on our social medias at FS Finest, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. We have a group over there and a page. So all of that stuff is there. You pick your flavor. You can follow us on there as well. So let's get into the episode. But we got to talk about what's going on around the NFL first. So that means we're going into our new segment. News and notes from around the NFL. Let's get it.
News and notes from around the NFL.
All right. First up, Elijah Moore, free agent wide receiver. He's been visiting the Miami Dolphins, the Buffalo Bills. He's looking to land with the Buffalo Bills. He's had a visit with them. There hasn't been any new updated information as to whether or not they're going to sign him, but they do have Khalil Shakir, who they paid recently. Keon Coleman is the second-year wide receiver who's already on the roster. They drafted him last season. Amari Cooper is a free agent. More on him later. And they did sign Joshua Palmer, former wide receiver from the Los Angeles Chargers. So they have, some guys over there, but maybe Elijah Moore is somebody who can be their wide receiver or somebody can offer something that the other guys on the roster don't have just yet. Other news, Hunter Renfrow has signed with the Carolina Panthers. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta said that he expects Mark Andrews to remain with the Ravens. Now, remember, earlier in the offseason, there was some speculation that Mark Andrews was going to be traded away from the Ravens. I guess that play against the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs kind of soured on a lot of Ravens fans. So they was like, you know what? We might have to get rid of not Ball. We might have to get rid of Mark Andrews. But apparently this statement was made after the conclusion of day 2. So it's been speculated that, the Ravens couldn't really get more than a day 3 pick for Mark Andrews. So if they can't really get anything for him, they figure, we might as well keep him anyway. And I think that's a good decision. Let Mark Andrews restamp himself as one of the best tight ends in the league. Don't just ship him off like that. He had a down season. He was hurt in the beginning of the season. So, he had some things to work through. Let him build himself back up. Don't just chuck him out there like that. And I get why you kind of would, because Isaiah likely was balling last year, so you kind of got his replacement already. But let Mark Andrews do his thing. I think he still got something left in the tank. Free agent wide receiver Deontay Johnson is signing with the Cleveland Browns. Now, Johnson is likely to play on the outside with Cedric Tillman. This would push Jerry Jeudy into the slot, making him a bit more dangerous. And Johnson has been through 3 teams in one season. He played last year. He started with the Panthers after being traded from the Steelers. He then got traded to the Baltimore first? No, it was Houston first. He got traded to the Houston Texans. Then the Texans traded him to the Baltimore Ravens, and none of those spots worked out. Now, I don't believe that it's all entirely Deontay Johnson's fault. I think when you trade a player, especially a wide receiver, in the middle of the season, and then you send them to the Ravens, who kind of had their pass catching situation all kind of resolved, and they don't pass the ball a lot as it is. And remember, I believe they were second lowest in pass attempts. So you kind of already have your guys established. He's not really going to get on, with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, it was puzzling that he couldn't get on with the Houston Texans because, they lost Stephon Diggs in the middle of the season. They lost Tank Dell towards the end of the season. And they kind of had a bunch of targets laying around. Why they didn't use him, it was beyond me. But I guess after being traded a couple of times, you would kind of get tight. And then if your role's not specifically made or you're known of what you're going to do, I don't know. I kind of feel for him. Like, I don't want to be chucked around like this, and I got to learn 3 different playbooks in the same season. You already had to deal with Bryce Young, not really taking off with him. He was having a great season with Andy Dalton for a couple weeks, and then they were like, Bryce Young's coming back, and Deontay Johnson kind of just faded back into nothingness. But he's going to be with the Cleveland Browns. He gets to reunite with one of his old guys, Kenny Pickett. And I'm not going to speculate and say that they don't like each other, but Kenny Pickett couldn't see Deontay Johnson while he was there. And I don't think that he would want Kenny Pickett to be his quarterback. So, but it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic works out. But speaking of Kenny Pickett, the Browns are not exercising his 5th-year option. Now, I kind of get why. Apparently, his 5th-year option was $22.1 million. I'm not paying him that either. So I get why the Browns are not going to bring him back or exercise his 5th-year option. And now it's going to be looking like a four quarterback battle heading into Browns training camp. Because remember, the Browns drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd. They drafted Shador Sanders in the 5th. They traded for Kenny Pickett, who's on the roster, and they signed free agent quarterback Joe Flacco. So now you have a 4-headed monster heading into training camp. That's going to be crazy. Now, I'm going to lay it down now. My bid for the Browns quarterback spot is going to be Shador Sanders. I think that he's the best quarterback that's on that roster. And before anybody comes out and says, oh, well, Kenny Pickett won a Super Bowl, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Kenny Pickett played when the game was already confirmed for the Eagles. Let's not throw Kenny Pickett's Super Bowl ring in there like it's worth something. It's not. He's on the team with the Eagles last year. Yes, they won a Super Bowl. Kenny Pickett was not a big part of that. So let's not go in there and say, oh, well, Kenny Pickett's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. No, he's not. So if he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback and the Browns felt that highly of him, they would have exercised that 5th-year option. But they haven't. So 4-headed monster heading into training camp. My money is on Shador Sanders to get that job. I think he can beat out Kenny Pickett, who's the only real threat for Shador Sanders to get that starting job. Joe Flacco is 40 years old. Now, yes, he did get the Cleveland Browns to a playoff berth. They won a playoff game with Joe Flacco. He definitely helped me in my fantasy league. He balled out. Amari Cooper was like lights out that game against the Houston Texans. So I'm not going to slam Joe Flacco, but let's be serious. Joe Flacco's like 40. It's time for the Browns to see what the young people can do, because Deshaun Watson is more than likely played his last game, which was last season, and he was not great, with the Cleveland Browns. So you got to see what these young guys can do. Kenny Pickett could be your potential backup. Shador Sanders, I think he's got the stuff to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Now, remember we talked about Amari Cooper a little bit earlier. The Cowboys have expressed interest in a possible reunion with Amari Cooper, and this news comes by way of Nick Harris of the Star-Telegram. Now, Harris is quoted as saying, "While attention is still devoted to the trade market, so is the availability of veteran free agents. Intriguing options remain unsigned, such as Keenan Allen, Nelson Aguilar, and Robert Woods." Now, for those who are listening in audio, I made a face. Those last two names, I made a face. You can only imagine what my face was if you're listening to the podcast after those last two names. Nelson Aguilar and Robert Woods. Now, all right, let me finish the quote. It says, "However, there is building team interest in bringing in free agent Amari Cooper back for a reunion in Dallas," according to Star-Telegram's team source, Nick Harris. In all reality, it's only two options that the Cowboys should be looking at. It should be Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. Those are the only two options that the Cowboys should be looking at to add as a wide receiver 2 for that team. We already have a bunch of, I'm not gonna say the word I was gonna say. Jags. I was gonna say Jags. We already have a bunch of guys on the roster. At this point, that's what Robert Woods and Nelson Aguilar, that's what they are. They're just guys. We don't need just guys. We need players that can play. Keenan Allen had a good season last year with the Chicago Bears with a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. Amari Cooper, I'm going to cut Cooper some slack because he got traded in the middle of the season to the Buffalo Bills. Now, granted, they did need a wide receiver to come and help them out, but they just couldn't get on the same page. He couldn't get on the same page with Josh Allen. I don't know what that was about. Maybe Josh Allen wasn't checking for him like that. Maybe Amari Cooper wasn't picking up the playbook like that. He was dealing with a couple injuries. Maybe all of that culminated into a down season with Amari Cooper. And remember, he got traded from the Cleveland Browns. Who did they have at quarterback that was like that was helping them out in the beginning of the season? So I'm going to give Amari Cooper some slack. I don't think that he's washed, and I don't think Keenan Allen is either. Those are the only two names that the Cowboys need to be focused on. Nelson Aguilar and Robert Woods should not even be in the equation. And if you're looking at them seriously and you're saying, you know what, man, we can add Nelson Aguilar and Robert Woods, and they would be great wide receiver 2s. Whoever's saying that in the Cowboys building, they need to be fired. Because you can't be serious. You cannot sit here and be serious and say, you know what, man, those two guys, Nelson Aguilar and Robert Woods, we should definitely consider adding them. And then you're adding them over Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen? And you're getting paid to do this? Like, no. Whoever's saying that in the Cowboys building, get them out and get them away from Jerry. Like, don't do that. Please don't do that. Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen. Those are the only two names that you guys need to be focused on. And it shouldn't be hard to pick between both of them who you want. It shouldn't. This should be a layup. This should be a layup. This move should have already been done at the end of the draft because you didn't come away with a wide receiver during the draft. Now, you got some guys from the undrafted. You got some guys. Isaiah Bond is still out there. He's got a situation that he's got to deal with first, and I understand why people around the league are not touching him. You know, they're waiting to see that resolution for his situation. And once that happens, I'm pretty sure Isaiah Bond is going to have a market where teams are going to be trying to add him. He would be a player that I would add to my team because we need every wide receiver we can get. So it should be a layup. This shouldn't be a tough decision. Hopefully we'll get some kind of news as to a decision that's going to be made to bring either Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper in. All right, let's keep moving. Some Derek Carr news. Speaking at a church service on Sunday, Derek Carr said that he has had an MRI on his shoulder and has been in constant communication with the Saints. Now, if you're just picking up on what's been going on with Derek Carr, he has a shoulder injury, and the speculation is that he could possibly miss much, if not all, of the 2025 season behind this injury. Now, he says that, he's been in communication with the Saints. They know what's going on. Nobody else knows what's going on with him. And, there's also people believing that, Carr is trying to use this as an opportunity to get out from playing with the Saints. They did draft a quarterback in, I think in the third round, Tyler Show. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but he, they do have a quarterback on the roster. They still have Spencer Rattler. That's not Kellen Moore's guy. So, Show will probably be Moore's guy heading into 2025 if Derek Carr doesn't play. So it still remains to be seen if Derek Carr is going to be able to play in 2025. The general manager has already come out and said that, Carr is going to be the starter. I believe he was asked a question about, the competition, the quarterback competition heading into training camp. And the GM is already on record saying that, Derek Carr is a starter. So hopefully he does play, because I still believe that Derek Carr is a positive for the skill positions for the New Orleans Saints, as opposed to what we could get with a rookie quarterback. But until we know more about that shoulder injury, that it's going to be left in the dark. Now, with the draft being over, I know this one is a little bit of old news, but ESPN's Adam Schefter reported that the Falcons have privately discussed trading Kirk Cousins to other teams. There was also another report out that stated that Kirk Cousins was going to waive his no trade clause at the end of day 2, because you figured teams have already drafted their quarterbacks that needed quarterbacks, and that would give you a path to see who still needed a quarterback heading into 2025. Now, one of the rumored requests is that whoever they trade with for Kirk Cousins, they want somebody to pick up that $20 million tab that's on his contract for 2025. So, because Kirk Cousins is owed $45 million in 2025. Yeah. So they want you to pay almost half to get Kirk Cousins. They're going to eat some money with that contract, but we'll see. I still think the Steelers need a quarterback. I don't know if they're still waiting for Aaron Rodgers. There hasn't been much to that end. Aaron Rodgers has said that he's communicated with those he need to know what's going on with him. But the Steelers don't have a quarterback, to me, that's going to be viable for fantasy football and bringing out the most in George Pickens and DK Metcalf. Because you just traded for Metcalf, but you still don't have a quarterback. Like, that's kind of weird to me. And finally, to wrap up our news segment, 49ers and George Kittle have agreed to a new 4-year contract worth $76 million, $40 million guaranteed. Now, this makes George Kittle the highest paid tight end in the NFL. But what's funny about it is when Diana Rossini came out and said that, George Kittle wants to be the highest paid tight end in the NFL, he shot the report down. He said, you know what, that's not true. And, somebody else commented like, what's your source? And he was like, me. But then the report comes out of his new contract and he's the highest paid tight end in the NFL. Like, come on, Kittle, you could have let her have it. It's not a big secret. Of course, it's your turn. You want to get paid. I understand. But you ain't had to shoot Rossini down like that. That was a cold piece, man. That was mean. That was mean. But that'll do it for the news. Let's get into our Megan segment now. My 2025 rookie watch list.
Fantasy Rookie Watch.
All right. Now it's time for my watch list. And I'm going to admit, it's a little running back heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were a lot of running backs that I liked in this draft. There is a wide receiver or two on here, and I didn't want to dab into the tight ends too much. I wanted to focus on the running back because what I believe is that running backs, they help fantasy teams. I know it's a passing league, and I know that, it's PPR formats are taking over fantasy leagues, but I feel like if you have a good stable of running backs, your wide receivers, the wide receiver position is just so deep that you can hit on wide receivers a bit more than you can hit on running backs because, you have tandem situations now like the Detroit Lions. They popularized having a tandem backfield like with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I feel like that trend is starting to take effect and take root in a lot more backfields this coming season. But the running back position, I feel like, is the core of a good fantasy team. And if you can find a rookie who's going to be able to kind of sneak into a fantasy team and provide that oomph, I like having a running back or two in my back pocket that I can get later on in my fantasy drafts and be able to help my team out. So I got a few names on here, and I want you to let me know if you're watching or you're listening on, whatever you're listening on to this podcast. Let me know what you think of my list. I probably could add a couple more guys, and then we're going to have other podcast episodes about the draft. So I'm definitely going to be talking about wide receivers. So I just don't want you to believe that, you left some good wide receivers out. And if I did, more likely you're going to see, but if you felt like there's a wide receiver that I should be paying attention to, please let me know in the comment section on YouTube, or if you see this clip, leave a comment and let me know what wide receiver I should be looking at heading into the fantasy season. But these running backs, man, the class was deep. So I got to let you know who I was looking at. And I do have a wide receiver that I think fantasy managers should be paying attention to. But my first guy is Travion Henderson. And I know you're probably thinking like, well, he was one of the best running backs. He was like top 4, top 5 heading into the draft. Why you put him on here? And the reason why I put him on here is because he got drafted to the New England Patriots in the second round. And, you may not know. So if you're listening to this for the first time, Travion Henderson is a very good running back. He played in the tandem at Ohio State not behind Quinshon Judkins, who got drafted to the Cleveland Browns. He is a versatile and strong running back. I like Travion Henderson. Shoot, I was hoping that the Cowboys would try and move up to grab him because I knew that run was coming somewhere in the second and third round, that a lot of the popular running backs that were in the draft after Amari Hampton, after Ashton Genty, were going to start coming off in the second round, and that's what happened in the beginning. And he ended up with the New England Patriots, and I'm not going to lie, I don't like the situation. I do like the player. I don't like the situation because the Patriots already have Ramondre Stevenson. They already have Antonio Gibson on the roster. And his immediate path for fantasy success is going to be hindered by those two guys. So that's why I have to have Travion Henderson on my watch list because, the GM came out, Elliott Wolf, he came out and stated that, Henderson is a 3-down back and he's a good compliment. You already believe that he's a 3-down back. This tells me two things. Either Travion Henderson is going to have to earn it. Of course, he's going to have to earn his spot. He's the young guy. He's the young guy coming in. But this also puts Ramondre Stevenson on notice. They have a guy who can come in and handle the rock. Remember, Ramondre Stevenson was dealing with fumbling issues last year. Wasn't a good look for him. Stevenson finished with 661 yards rushing. He averaged 4 yards per attempt last year. He's not getting younger. Travion Henderson, his last season in Ohio State, 7.1 yards per attempt. 8th best in FBS. He was playing with another running back, and he was cooking that much. 7.1 yards per attempt. He can do it all. He can take it to the house. He's got speed. He's shifty. He can make a guy miss in open space. This is a running back who should be starting on a team. But he's going to have to work his way through Ramondre Stevenson, through Antonio Gibson in order to cement himself in that offense. But I feel like that statement by Elliott Wolf, that's putting Ramondre on notice. He's going to be 28. He didn't play well last season. TreVeyon Henderson is a starting running back. I don't like the situation, but I got to have him on my watch list. And when I say my watch list, these are guys that I'm going to be watching this offseason. I'm paying attention to what's going on there because that kind of versatility is going to be great for PPR formats. It's going to be great for Dynasty because if they decide to move on from Ramondre Stevenson, who's going to be the starter? It's going to be TreVeyon. It's going to be him. So he's going to be building. They're looking to build around Drake May. They want to add as many weapons as they can to him, and they need a running game. They need a guy who's not going to come and drop the ball. He's not going to fumble. I like TreVeyon Henderson. I want to see him get that spot, that number one spot, or at least push Stevenson. And in order to do that, he gets the reps, he gets the playing time, he gets used on third down situations. And if we see him start to really cook, he could be a guy that you can get off the waiver wire. I don't think that he's going to be a late round. I feel like he's going to be a late, and this is in standard PPR formats. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be a running back that you can get late in your draft, before the end. I think he's still going to be drafted. He's going to be one of those players that a lot of fantasy guys are going to be saying to stash him on your bench. You know, they're not confident in Ramondre Stevenson. You know, Antonio Gibson he was okay. He averaged 4.4 or 4.5 yards per attempt last season, but he's not going to be the guy. It's Ramondre is the guy that TreVeyon's going to have to go through. And if Ramondre starts off the season like he did last year, fumbling the ball, turning over the ball, he's not being effective on the field, they're going to turn to TreVeyon Henderson. But we got to wait. He's not going to be, I don't believe he's going to have an immediate impact right out the gate like some of the other guys, like your Genties, like your Quinshaw Judkins players, Caleb Johnson, you know, with the Steelers. They're going to have immediate impacts. Omarion Hampton is another guy who is not going to have an immediate impact, but because Najee Harris is in front of him. But I think that situation is going to rectify itself a lot sooner than what TreVeyon's got to deal with in New England. But that's just a sprinkle. See, I ain't talking about them guys. But I have TreVeyon Henderson on my watch list. He's one of my top priorities to keep an eye on in the offseason and training camp leading up to the preseason to see how New England is going to treat him. Now, my next guy is a wide receiver. I told you I got one. Deontay Thornton Jr., wide receiver, got drafted to the Las Vegas Raiders. This guy is huge. No diddy. 6'5", runs a 4.3. I like big wide pause. I like wide receivers. I like tall wide receivers that have speed because that's what I wanted for the Cowboys to get. That's why I wanted Tedderell McMillan, and the Carolina Panthers screwed the Cowboys by picking him early. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to let those feelings resurface. But Deontay Thornton lands with the Las Vegas Raiders. They're revamping their wide receiver room. They drafted Jack Beck from TCU. He's going to be one of their starting wide receivers. They already have Jacoby Myers, who's a holdover. But Thornton brings size and speed. He can high point the ball. He plays well in 50-50 balls. They have a weapon outside that can play outside. You're probably going to slide Jack Beck, or you can play both him and Myers in out of the slot. You can rotate those guys out of the slot. But Thornton brings a size element and speed, deep threat element to the Raiders offense for Geno Smith. I think that's going to be a positive. The problem is that there's going to be a lot of pass catchers that Thornton is going to have to navigate through in order to cement himself as a starter in wide receiver 3 sets. Remember, you still have Ashton Jeanty, who's a great pass catcher. out of the backfield at running back. You have Brock Bowers, who had a phenomenal rookie campaign. He's not going anywhere. You have Jacoby Myers, who's likely going to be the wide receiver 1, for Geno Smith. And you have Jack Beck, who they also drafted in round 3. Dante Thornton didn't come off the board until round 6. But there's not much else at the wide receiver position for the Raiders. So as they continue to revamp their team, Thornton has an opportunity. It's just a matter of, is he going to get the snaps, and then is he going to get the targets? But you can't dismiss that kind of speed. You can't dismiss his size. He averaged 25.4 yards per reception in his last season with Tennessee. He's got talent. It's just a matter of, is he going to get the opportunity to display that talent? So that's why he's on the list. You got to watch him. You got to watch him throughout training camp. You got to read the reports and all of that stuff leading up to the preseason. See how he develops. If he can really ball at the NFL level, can you imagine having a 6'5" deep threat? And then you have another option in the red zone that you can just lob the ball up to at 6'5". How many corners are 6'4"? There's not a lot of tall corners in the NFL. But if you get a guy who can play at that level, and despite his draft stock, that's great. That's a great addition. And you're going to get him for cheap. You're not getting him. You're not going to have to pay a premium in dynasty formats to get him. You're probably getting him in, my dynasty league goes 2 rounds. We have a first round and a second round. You might have a dynasty league that goes 3 rounds. Depends on your formats. But you're probably going to get him. He's probably going to be a second round wide receiver that you can get and not look back. You can take a dart throw on and see how he works. You can put him on a taxi squad and, wait to see what he does. But Thornton, I feel like you got to keep an eye on him as well. That's, like I said, man, that size and speed, man, you can't dismiss that. Have run 6'5" and running a 4.3, and you were averaging 25 yards a catch? You should have got the ball more. But yeah, that's why he's on my list. He's got an uphill battle against some better pass catchers, some that are already established, some that are, based on draft stock. We got to wait. It's a wait and see situation. So I'm hoping that Thornton gets on with the Raiders. Now, don't call me a homer, but these next 2 guys, I'm really feeling. Jaden Blue, Phil Maffa for the Dallas Cowboys running back. Now, Jaden Blue is giving me Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs type vibes, Bucky Irving, because of his size and speed. He's 5'9". He's about 196 pounds. He's probably going to have to pick up some weight, kind of like Devon Achane did during his rookie season. He's got to bulk up so he can take those hits. But he's a spectacular speed threat for the Cowboys, something that they haven't had in a while. And I know some will point to Tony Pollard. I've seen comps on Twitter about, he compares to early Tony Pollard home run threat. He looks much faster than Tony Pollard. 4.29, 40 time. He can catch out of the backfield. And I mean catch. Like, he can run routes and catch. He can do all of that. So Blue brings an element of speed to the Cowboys backfield that we have, we haven't seen in a long time. And his frame and body kind of remind you of those other guys I mentioned, Achane, Gibbs. I'm not saying he can play like them, because I've already gotten that misconception. I'm not saying that he can play like them. We have not seen Jaden Blue play at the NFL level. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is his frame gives you that impression, like those guys, like your Bucky Irvins, like your Jahmyr Gibbs, like your Devon Achanes. If he can play like them at his size, the Cowboys might have something. They got him in the 5th round. And I feel like this is a situation where they're going to pay, let me say that right. They're going to put him with, or pair him with, another running back. And that's where Phil Maffa comes in. Clemson running back, 6'1", 234. You got your Lightning with Jaden Blue. You got your potential thunder with Phil Maffa. And I'll be honest. I'm not gonna sit here and say, I scouted him and all of this stuff. I was aware. I'm way ahead of these guys. I knew about Phil Maffa. I know a lick of nothing about Phil Maffa. You know who put me on to Phil Maffa? My 11-year-old. I'm not even gonna hold you. My 11-year-old and my 9-year-old put me on to Phil Maffa, and the reason they know about him is because they played with him on the was it NCAA 25, 24? One of them. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know which one they have, but they played with Clemson and they played with Phil Maffa. And as soon as he got drafted, my son goes, "Dad, do you know about Phil? You know about Phil Maffa?" And I'm like, "No, who is that?" Who is that? And he was like pulling up highlights and he's pulling up, information about him. I'm like, "Man, he looks good. He looks really good. Even his stats, I can't be mad at his stats. 1,100, both of them. Blue and Maffa were 1,100 yards from scrimmage, averaging, over 4.5 yards per carry in their final seasons at, Texas for Blue and Clemson for Maffa. But the Cowboys, there's opportunity there. We've seen, we know that the Cowboys picked up Javonte Williams, former Broncos running back. We know they picked up Miles Sanders, former Panthers, Eagles running back. But we've seen what they can do. Now, I'm not completely out on Javonte Williams as I am on Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders is done. He had one good season with the Philadelphia Eagles behind the best offensive line in the league. And then he went to Carolina. He got paid, and he stunk. Javonte Williams has not been able to stay healthy. He's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with low performance. He was a holdover when Sean Payton got there. He didn't perform well under Payton. I mean, this would be his last hurrah, but I'm willing to take a chance on seeing Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa as a tandem behind a hopefully revamped offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys. And I say, why not? Why not? What do the Cowboys have to lose in playing Phil Maffa and Jaden Blue together? They're probably not going to bring up another running back. They already picked up 2 in free agency. You know how Jerry think. He already got 2. He's not going to make another play. Nick Chubb is still out there. If anything, I'd bring him in. And I'd let Chubb and Blue, be my new tandem. But if they're not going to bring in another running back, if they're not going to bring in a guy like Nick Chubb, they're probably going to stand pat. So why not see what Phil Maffa can do with Jaden Blue, who they were high on, who they were reportedly high on. See what you can do with that tandem. Both are home run hitting guys. I know for some reason Phil Maffa is not really talked about as a home run hitter or the ability to take it to the house. He can do it. He's a very good pass catcher, or good enough. He doesn't fumble too much. Jaden Blue, that's where his hiccup was. He fumbles. He had 4 fumbles last year. He lost 2. He's got to tighten that up. But I'm definitely taking a chance on a guy who can run a 4.29. He makes a guy miss and he's gone. We haven't had that since Tony Pollard. Something similar to Tony Pollard. Yeah. But I want to see how they shake out. So that's why they made the list. Especially Phil Maffa. If he can perform well during the preseason, because that's when he's going to get his chance to really shine. If he can perform during the preseason, we could see, not only could we see a new tandem in Dallas, but in dynasty formats, you're probably going to get Maffa for free. More than likely. I'm not going to say probably. You're getting him for free. In standard fantasy leagues, you're going to get him for free. Nobody's going to be checking for Phil Maffa. Nobody going to know who that is. I've been in plenty of drafts where people didn't know who Devon Achane was. I picked him up in I believe it was like the 8th or 9th round in his rookie year. And people were like, who's that? Why'd you pick him? You don't know? I was getting laughed at. Raheem Mostert, he's the lead back. He's the lead back. What did you do that for? Who's Devon Achane? He's a rookie. He's small. I got all of that. Then he was cooking. And they were like, yo, where's this guy at? He's on Will's squad. Sometimes it pays to be ahead. I feel like this is one of those situations. Both of them. Both Blue and Mafra. That's why they're on my list. And there's plenty of opportunity. I don't think the Cowboys are going to run a three-headed monster. They purposely picked Jaden Blue because of what he can do. But I don't believe that he's an every down back. He's a back that you can use a lot of, but I don't think that you can run him every down. He's just not. I don't want him. If I'm the Cowboys, I don't want to put him in a position where he has to take a pounding every week. I don't think he's built like that. He's going to have to bulk up a little bit. But he's fast. He's fast. He's fast. You need that speed on the field. So, yeah, I'm looking at both of them in my back pocket. Now another one, New York, the New York Giants, Cam Scatterbo. I saw a lot of hype on him coming up during the draft, pre-draft. A lot of people were talking about him on Twitter. A lot of people were really hype about where he could land. I was kind of hoping that the Giants wouldn't take another running back. I was fine with Tyrone Tracy. I didn't think that he played bad last year. The Giants' offense was not great. So them taking another running back instantly turns it into a committee. And with the kind of back that they have in Scatterbo, who's been comped to players like Christian McCaffrey. Once you start making them comparisons, and believe me, I try and do as much research as I can. There's a lot of guys to go over sometimes, and you get overwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do my due diligence on Cam Scatterbo until he was drafted. And when you look at what this kid did in Arizona, his final year in Arizona State, just over 1,700 yards, 21 rushing touchdowns, and he can catch. He can run routes. Are you kidding me? Now you have him with the Giants, and the Giants they had a pretty good draft. Can't lie about that either. They had a great draft. The NFC East as a whole had a great draft. And now you have weapons. You still got. I think they could use another wide receiver, but they have Malik Neighbors as the crown jewel of their pass catchers and wide receiver. And now you have Cam Scatterbo, 5'10", 219. He's not little. Well, he's kind of little, but he's a big back. He's not scared to go through the middle. He's not scared to run between the tackles. He can, but he can catch out of the backfield, and he's hard to bring down. What more could you ask for? And you got him in the 5th. The Giants got a solid running back. And solid is, I'm using that term loosely. The boy has 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns. He was averaging 5.8 yards per attempt. He was getting work, and he's versatile. What more could you ask for? Look, it's going to be, I'll put it like this. It's going to start out as a committee. It's Tyrone Tracy's job to lose. It really is. It's his job to lose. And he's going to have to be on his A game if he wants to keep that starting role, lead back role. He's going to have to keep his foot on the gas in order to not lose his job to a guy who's very capable in Cam Scatterbo. But yeah, I want to see how that situation works out. If he takes the job during training camp, oh boy, that's going to be crazy. And I'm going to round it out my list with this running back. Ollie Gordon II landed with the Miami Dolphins during the draft. Now, here's my working theory. The Miami Dolphins are trying to get that old thing back. That year that they had with Devon Achane in his rookie season and Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, not Ramondre Stevenson. Why I got him on the brain? We already talked about him. Raheem Mostert. They're trying to get that tandem back. I think they may have something with Ollie Gordon. Now, Raheem Mostert, see, I'm about to do it again. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, they're not there anymore. They left during free agency. They haven't been brought back. The Miami Dolphins did pick up Alexander Madison, but he's just a guy right now. They also have Jalen Wright, who they drafted last year. Did not have a great season, just 279 rushing yards. I believe 2 touchdowns. That was it. With Raheem Mostert, getting banged up, you could probably attribute his lack of performance because Tua was missing games. That didn't stop Devon Achane, though. But Wright didn't do enough where the Miami Dolphins felt comfortable going into the season with Achane, Wright, and Alexander Madison. They went and got another running back that was able to go over 1,700 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns. He led the Big 12 in rushing yards. Ollie Gordon is a big back. Not a big back, a big back. When I say big back, I'm not big back. No, I'm not doing that. He's a big guy. 6'1", I believe 220 or 230. He's got some juice on him. He's not, 4.2 speed like that, but he can drag a pile. He can deliver punishment. That's the big back you need that you can pair with Devon Achane. And how many people are going to be checking for Ollie Gordon? That's why I'm saying these guys are on my list. These are sleepers. These are my sleepers outside of Travion Henderson. He's not going to be considered a sleeper. He's just a situation that I want to watch. I want to keep an eye on that. But these other guys, these are going to be sleepers. These are going to be guys that you can get later on in your dynasty drafts. You can get later on dart throws towards the end of your 14 or 15 or 16 round draft in PPR, 12 team. These are guys that you should have in your back pocket. You should have information and knowledge on them. None of these guys were slouches in college. They were pretty good or better. They just got picked late. There were other guys that were better than them. But fantasy football is about opportunity. Landing spot and opportunity when it comes to rookies. Do they have a path that they could have immediate success or immediate potential? And if they can't, you look at their situation and say, you know what? What's going to change in a year or two that would still make these guys fantasy viable? There are other players that are coming that have been drafted that may have to wait a year or two. We're going to be talking about them soon too. But fantasy football, to me, is about opportunity. And for rookies, opportunity and landing spot. And some of these guys, if you are paying attention and their teams are paying attention to them and they're putting in the work, they're going to be hard to ignore come preseason. And believe me, let's say a few of these guys do hit. Let's say a Jaden Blue hits. Let's say Cam Scatterbo hits. Let's say Ollie Gordon hits. You're going to be hearing about these guys the closer we get to August, when draft season really kicks off. Best ball drafts are different. They kind of set the foundation of what ADP is going to be, and then everything starts to shift between the beginning of best ball season and, let's say, late July. That's where you really start to see ADP change. Players fall, players rise. But you were ahead of the game on some of these guys because you gave me a chance. So that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put y'all onto some players before everybody starts talking about them. A little humble flex, just in case they do work out. Then you be like, hey, man, you know what? I remember that guy Will from Fantasy's Finest. He was talking about Ollie Gordon. He was talking about Cam Scatterbo in that situation. He was talking about whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's all. Just put it out there. But that'll do it for this episode, man. Thank you guys for checking out the latest episode of the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Please make sure that you are subscribing to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you're commenting on the posts, on the videos, on the podcast episodes. Like and share, because it helps the channel out. You can also check out the latest episodes. We will be posting them on our website, fantasyfinest.com. And you can also check out that website. Subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss the latest articles that'll be up on there. We do tips and advice as well, so there's going to be other pieces, short form content, longer form content, articles in detail breaking down fantasy for the 2025 season. But that'll be it for the episode. Thank you for checking us out, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Be sure to join the community on Facebook and follow us on Twitter too, at the Fantasy's Finest. See you next episode.